we are living in a very delicate time period in human history. The education system has failed us, especially the ones that, the methods or the paradigms that had been imposed upon teachers. I'm talking as young as elementary, especially during junior and high school years. I used to be a junior and high school teacher for over a decade, and then college and university. But I've noticed even during my time as a high school teacher how the system was trying to infiltrate what the teachers were supposed to do, how they were supposed to teach. You're not supposed to do that. Teachers are, after all, tackling one of the toughest professions. We need to hold teachers in the highest regard. But when it has become contaminated by policies, this and that, and the teachers were now finding themselves overwhelmed with responsibilities. I used to describe at one point in my teaching profession, in those years, I wasn't a bhikkhu then, of course, but I would have this image of teaching with my hands tied behind my back. First it was one hand, and then it was two. And then I noticed that there was going to be a duct tape on my mouth. I mean, these are all metaphors, of course, that I'm using them as. However, reality is far worse than my metaphors may present, due to the frustrations that were being created. When they had policies like No Child Left Behind, when they had, in America at least, which spread like wildfire, especially into countries like Anglo countries, Australia, New Zealand, other places, English speakers. And some families, some parents were audacious and at the same time courageous enough to say, you know what, I'm going to pull my child out of this school, this institution, and put them in a better qualified, more wholesome, holistic, more grounded, with less red tape type of an atmosphere. And many of them unfortunately came with a big, price tag. And I know parents who work day and night in this difficult economy still to pay for their children, even at the time of COVID, when the child is now at home. But still, they're better off than just being at a normal public school or charter schools and things like that, where there's less and less control from the inside, meaning the teachers. The teachers need to have control over their curriculum, over their methods of delivery. Each teacher is a wealth of experience. Again, an ideal teacher, that's you always have different capacities, shall we say, or intentions behind the person being in a particular career. But to me, teaching is in such high regard. I take it as such, because the future depends on them. Now, if the future depends on the teacher, meaning the child is the one who will be carrying that knowledge into the future, into the unknown, what you are or not putting in front of the child as they're growing up, as far as experiences go, critical thinking skills, the establishment of frameworks and worldviews, paradigms, in other words, are established there in the school. Now, obviously, the parents have something to do with this, but it's becoming more and more minuscule in comparison, because of the phone, the iPad, and now it's 100% iPad or screen. The student is not going to be in the presence of a teacher or fellow classmates. Digital presence is not real presence. So even though they want to sell it as such, but there is a very, I would say, evil intentionality behind this. But it didn't start today, or it didn't even start with Corona, with COVID. It's been ongoing for years. So I tried my best during those 10 plus years of being a high school teacher and then college and then later in higher academia. I realized that it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So long as the student, the person, is exposed to these influences. And we are. In fact, you don't no longer have to be in the classroom to be exposed to these horrendously immoral. In fact, even the word immoral has become obsolete. It's like anything goes. This whole word that they manipulate the English language. This whole thing about permeability or a spectrum where it's become like brushstrokes of gray, paint on everything, where you cannot use certain words to describe something that's blatantly staring at you in the face. Meanwhile, private companies are dictating what you need to see, how you're educated, and how your child is educated. So schools are already obsolete. Okay, why? Well, if you need to control populations and turn them into sheep, into consumers, I mean, we knew about the consumerism, this and that for decades, but society knew about this, but we thought it was going to be far out there in the future. We never expected it to be in our lifetime. Today you have comedians, stand-up comedians, who used to be really out there, quote unquote, in their usage of profanities and being so open to possibilities and interpretations when it came to virtue and moral values. Those same comedians from the 90s or the 2000s are shocked at the level of immoral and anything goes attitude that they are seeing. Their jaws have now dropped. They're like shocked to see what's happening in the world around them. And they're trying to make a stand and to kind of make people become a little bit more cognizant of what they are agreeing to. We have no rights now. Whatever we have left, that's also is being stripped from us. And you have corporate characters coming out, and they have more of a clout presence than politicians. Something that the educated masses would talk about this. Intelligent people used to talk about this for decades, but they were thought to be almost like a conspiracy theorist. And that's another thing. The mass media, the social media now, that's the label that they will stick on you the moment you speak against this whole agenda that's really turning us into subhuman. And science is quiet because most of these people, they have their funding coming in. You cannot write a scientific article or any kind of a major life-changing, altering, ground-shaking, shattering, revelatory piece if no one's there to publish it. So you have today the biggest institutions, Johns Hopkins, you have King's College, you have big places like Stanford, all these huge places, they are funded by these huge entities who also are providing support, lifeblood, money to pharmacological companies, pharmaceuticals. So everything is attached now. It's like a web. But if you don't have that class of population that used to still know how to do critical thinking, why? And they're dying out. The new generation is shockingly distant from it, from being able to take into account several different things. And all you have to do is put out an ideology, and you get some supportive talk show hosts or something like that. You put it on a major news network, and it's talked about. All of a sudden, it becomes a big thing. So your exposure makes you a valid piece of knowledge. Unlike the one that is not mentioned on these huge forums, which, by the way, automatically makes you a conspiracy theorist. Why? Because if you were not, you would be legitimate. And what proves that you're legitimate? Well, obviously you would be on a major corporation, news corporation like CNN, BBC. Somebody would be, a big name that is on the news, would be talking openly about it. So the exposure itself makes the thing to be, quote unquote, truth or a lie. So we have come so far away out of the reservation as a humanity. And today you have in the social sciences departments, I used to be a professor in social sciences, humanities. It's shocking. So many of these great minds, philosophers who fought through so much thick and thin to get us here, are turning in their graves. And you have today gray-haired professors who are mouthpieces for what is being put out there. They just gulp everything that is thrown at them like hungry dogs, and they turn on the people that they're supposed to be protecting, educating, to keep them out of the dark. But it is so hard to find them. Such individuals who have integrity to stand up and say, wait a minute. But if they do say that, they're immediately risking everything that they've worked for. The status. Or at least their livelihood, because they don't know anything else. They don't know how to go and become a mechanic or earn a living. Some people do, because they have higher integrity than the majority of these people who are public figures now. And by the way, if you have a following, you're a public figure. You don't have to be in government, political entity. No. If you're influencing millions of followers, you're a public figure. And I noticed that years ago as a professor, or even as I was mentioning, as a teacher in a high school, I used to notice how students are there opening their minds to me. That's such a privilege. That's such an honor. Not like a position that's so esteemed. So I would choose carefully the words that I'm using and if I presented an opinion, I made sure I expressed to them, this is my opinion. Please be aware of that. Even to my junior high kids, I would tell them this. And that is what a teacher is supposed to do. But not only is this rarely taking place, well, also the teacher doesn't have any control. Now they're forced to sit in front of a computer and teach. And the student is forced to sit at least for 5 hours a day. We're talking about kids that are as young as 5, 6. How in the world? So what you're doing is you are incapacitating the higher functioning of this human being that is still such a fledgling being. And if you're an adult already, you have been incapacitated in other ways. People who own businesses are going bankrupt because they don't have money to pay for rent, which, by the way, you're supposed to come up with, I guess, I don't know, through some alchemical means, create money through, I don't know how they're expecting, and this is happening all around the world. In some countries, a little bit assistance is here and there, but in the US, where we live, our country. So it's I was not expecting this to be happening this soon, as I was saying earlier. I'm kind of surprised it's happening so early. But you have all these characters that are showing up who were actively engaged from day one. But now they're coming out with their full color, and you're like supposed to accept them. Individuals who are not even elected. They used to try to dominate the market through monopoly tactics, sneaky tactics, and they were called in front of the Senate to defend themselves, and they were warned, and so they pull out and they go into a different field to dominate, now to even in a far worse way. I don't know if this vaccine is going to work, but people are dying because they've taken it. People are having side effects. You're not hearing about that. So there's this tremendous level of infusion, this Niagara of fear being pushed and pushed down our throats as a human population on this planet. And it should not be so. Nature takes care of itself. But people are benefiting from this. Billionaires are becoming even more. Some of them are actually lining up themselves to becoming trillionaires. And those are the visible characters. So education has been undermined in the world today. So is this, that's it, the end of the, no. You have control over your own education. I never believed in the public educational systems anyhow, anywhere in the world. The real education takes place within the person and how willing they are to explore. But in order for that to take place, we need to shut those other noises down. Not to listen to any mass media type of thing, social media. Be very cognizant and frugal with your attention as to what you're exposing it to. Facebook, this, that, no. Read. Read. Use YouTube, use Facebook, but use them wisely. Go exploring, expand your mind. It's not the end, but stop acting like it is. These people are going to go. Their sadistic methods are going to go. Before them, there were, Mao Zedong. Before them, there was, Stalin, Mussolini, all these characters. Now the same blood is running through these people. But these people have more insidious and pervasive techniques and more control than the other characters did. And those people were responsible for the millions and millions of people's deaths. But where are they now? They're dead too. All these characters are going to be dead too. These people who are trying to navigate us towards tragic ends. No. They don't control. Ultimately. They can't control their own thoughts. They cannot even practice the 5 precepts. Not to kill, not to lie, not to take what is not given to them, not to have sexual misconduct, not to get intoxicated. Oh, they don't have the ability. So what control are we talking about? Having money, controlling military, controlling the life or death of a person, that's not control. Controlling of your mind is control. Because ultimately, that person is not even able to control himself from dying, from getting sick. Every single one of them who's spending millions and maybe billions of dollars to extend their lives are going to die. That's a guarantee. They're not going to reach immortality. So for me, that's a blessing to know. Because nature is going to continue. And this is just a glitch. This is just a knot. This is just a nightmarish episode. That's going to go away. The day is going to come up. Daybreak is waiting. But we need to keep going forward and not lose ourselves in the panic. Not to lose ourselves in the panic and continue educating ourselves. So that's what I would offer.